And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, March 24th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into all that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day. So any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss today. So we're going to start off the show. We will take a look at the games from over the weekend in March Madness, some of the upsets, some of the best games from over the weekend, and we'll take an early look at the Sweet 16 and the matchups coming up later this week. Then, in the second part of the show, more Aaron Rodgers watch, and we actually do have an update that we will discuss, and that's the fact that he went and visited the Steelers. And we'll talk about that, what that means. So, more Aaron Rodgers talk today. Back to everybody's favorite topic, right? So, we'll get into that. Then, in the third part of the show, we'll talk about LeBron James making his return to the Lakers after being out for a couple of weeks due to injury. So, we'll get into that, where the Lakers currently are in the Western Conference standings. Then, we're going to get into my favorite topic of the day that we're going to cover, and that is Jameis Winston signing with the New York Giants. That's right. We are going to get into that and what that means going forward. Really excited to get into that. And then in the final part of the show, we will talk about Jameis's old team, the Cleveland Browns. We will do a season overview on the Cleveland Browns and take a look at what they've done in the offseason. So that's the rundown for the show today. A lot of stuff to cover. So, let's get into the first topic now, which is talking about March Madness from over the weekend. So, I will say the round of 32 games were very entertaining. A lot of the games were very entertaining. We did get some blowouts in the first round. Also, not a ton of upsets. Not a ton of upsets over the course of these first two rounds. I mean, you had McNeese, but we did see Arkansas knock off St.Johns. John Calipari picks up a win against Rick Pitino. But, like I said, not a ton of upsets. Now, we did almost get the 12 seed Colorado State knock off Maryland, who was a 4 seed. We did get close to seeing that because they hit a clutch shot towards the end of the game to put themselves up by 2. Or by, actually no, was it by 2 or by 1? It was to go up. Oh, it was to go up by 1. Jalen Lake hit a 3-pointer with 7 seconds left, and I had Maryland advancing, so I was like, all right, I guess that's probably going to be a loss then. And then Derek Queen at the end of the game hit a 2-point shot at the buzzer to win the game, 72-71, and Maryland moves on, and we avoided another upset. So, but that was a very good game. The Friday games that happened, actually we'll go back to Friday really quickly. So, on Friday, you had Baylor and Mississippi State. That was an entertaining game. Baylor ended up winning 75-72, so 9 beat an 8. Robert Morris gave Alabama all they can handle. They hung around in that game. I think they had the lead late at one point. But Alabama was able to come away with the win. They ended up defeating Robert Morris 90-81. Iowa State, they won their matchup big, 82-55. Colorado State upset Memphis. They upset the 5 seed. So, but they were close to upsetting the 4 seed, but they didn't. But yeah, they won 78-70. Duke was all over Mount St. Mary's. Then you had St. Mary's defeating Vanderbilt 59-56. That was a close game. Ole Miss, they defeated UNC. I had UNC going to the Sweet 16. They got knocked out Maryland beat Grand Canyon 81-49. Grand Canyon did win a game last year in the tournament, and I thought in my main bracket I thought I had them advancing again, but it turns out I had Maryland. So thankfully you know I had that game right. Florida won their matchup. Kentucky. I did pick New Mexico to beat Marquette. Got that one right. I had Marquette in my Final Four last year. Thankfully, didn't have that this year. Arizona over Akron. UConn defeated Oklahoma. Illinois over Xavier. Michigan State over Bryant. And then Oregon all over Liberty, 81-52. Then on Saturday, so we get to Saturday, Purdue defeated McNeese. And that was actually the coach's last game, Will Wade. That was his last game at McNeese. Signed a contract. He's going to be coaching elsewhere next year. And he was very emotional at the end of the game, in the locker room talking to his team. They knew this was coming. They played well against Clemson. I mean, Clemson almost came back in the first round, but, they just ran into a better team. Purdue was up big for the most part. It ended up being, a little bit closer. Well, I mean, it was still a 14-point game, but still, did narrow the gap a bit towards the end, but yeah, Purdue was able to come away with the win, but that was emotional for them. McNeese losing that game, so Purdue advanced. Arkansas St. Johns was entertaining. I did pick Arkansas in the game. I did want to talk about that game a little bit more. So yeah, St. Johns not great shooting the basketball on Saturday. Also, free throws. They shot 71%. Not bad, but not great either. They went 2 for 2. Both teams actually were horrendous from the three-point line. St. John's shot 9% from three-point range, and Arkansas was 10, basically 10.5% from three-point range. They were 2 for 19. St. John's was 2 for 22. St. John's out-rebounded Arkansas, but yeah, and the other thing too is they were talking to Rick Pitino at the end of the game, because R.J. Lewis only had 9 points in the game. He shot 3 for 17, and there were a lot of memes about that. It's like, oh, he shot the day to St. Patrick's Day 3 for 17. He was over 3 from the field or from 3-point range, and they were talking to Pitino at the end of the game because they took him out. And Pitino was basically saying, like, look, you didn't have a good day, and he had to make a change. But it was a tough matchup, and this is what a lot of people were talking about going into the tournament, right? Because people were saying that St. John's could be a team that can make a deep run, or they could be a team that gets knocked out in the first 2 rounds. And I picked Arkansas because of Calipari. That was really the reason why. And also just because of, everything I was hearing with St. John's. And I was pulling for St. John's, but at the same time, I was like, well, I also have Arkansas in my bracket. So, and I have them going to, I actually have Arkansas going to the Elite Eight. Anthony in the chat, hope everything is all good with you. Of the games that have happened in March Madness, are there any point guards or guards into that I should be watching out for as a Heat fan that I could pair with Tyler Hero so we can move to shooting guard? Well, I don't know where the Heat are picking. That's number one. And I'll be honest, I like what I saw from, the players from Florida, of course, because what a great game yesterday with Florida and UConn. Knocking off UConn. They don't go for the three-peat. Also with the Auburn-Creighton game, I did have Creighton going far, but I had them going to the Elite Eight. They ended up losing. I don't know who's coming out of the draft. I mean, Pettiford had a really good game, but he's only a freshman. So, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know off the top of my head who is, going to be in the draft. I mean, we know Cooper Flagg, of course, but he's not going to be going to the Heat. So, yeah, I'm not sure on that one. have to take a deep dive into who's going to be in the NBA draft. But yeah, Arkansas, St. John's. St. John's goes down, but credit to them, great season, and hopefully they could be even better next year. Anthony says, according to most of the lottery simulators, we're going to be picking number 6. Okay, all right. So I think 6 is a good pick to have with the NBA. It's a lot different compared to the NFL, right? Because if you're picking, later in the draft, you're, later in the first round, you're not getting, you might not be getting a premier player, but, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, how that all shakes out. But Michigan, they knocked off Texas A&M. Like I said, Auburn, they defeated Creighton. BYU over Wisconsin. That game got very dicey towards the end of the game, but BYU was able to come away with the win. So we did have a 6 knockoff of 3. Drake ended up losing to Texas Tech. Houston defeated Gonzaga. That was a close game, but Houston was able to come away with the win. And Houston was winning by a lot for the majority of the game, but then, or a decent margin. But, Gonzaga narrowed the gap. It got close. And then Tennessee, they knocked off UCLA as well. And then yesterday, like I said, Florida knocked off UConn, so UConn does not go for the three-peat. They ended up losing by 2. You had a 3-pointer at the end of the game that made it a 2-point game. But yeah, UConn ends up falling. And actually, what was the stat that I took a screenshot of? So they had a 13-game tournament win streak. That's now over for Dan Hurley and the Huskies. But you know what? They'll be back next year. They will definitely be back. And if they had, Florida has more talent, right? And I think a lot of people would say that Hurley's probably the better coach. So, talent won that game yesterday for the Gators. So UConn's going to be back next year. I think we can all agree on that. And then, Duke was all over Baylor. They won 89-66. Cooper Flagg in the game yesterday. He had, what was his stats for yesterday? 18 points, went 5 of 11, 1 for 4 from 3. Tyrese Proctor, he was their leading scorer, 25 points on the day. It actually was very efficient, 9 of 10 and 7 of 8 from the 3-point range. And Duke is 33-3 right now on the season. Kentucky defeated the Fighting Illini. Alabama defeated St. Mary's 80-66. We talked about Colorado State and Maryland. Ole Miss, 6 knocked off at 3. They defeated Iowa State 91-78. Michigan State, this was a competitive game. The Spartans and the Lobos, but they were able to pick up the win, 71-63. They advanced. And then we had the Arizona Wildcats knock off the Oregon Ducks. Some former rivals, but now Oregon is in the Big Ten. Arizona won 87-83. And now we'll take a look at the matchups for Thursday. So you have BYU against Alabama, Maryland against Florida, Arizona against Duke, Arkansas against Texas Tech. And then on Friday, you have Ole Miss against Michigan State, Kentucky against Tennessee, Michigan against Auburn, and then Purdue against Houston. So, good games. Good games coming up later this week. And, of course, we also have opening day in baseball coming up as well. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the games from over the weekend. What were some of your favorite games? How are your brackets looking? My main bracket is looking pretty good, although Creighton losing, I had them in my Elite Eight. So, yeah, that was we tried to, at least pull off one major upset with Auburn getting knocked off. But they looked good. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. So we are going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers and him meeting with the Steelers. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign. wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about Aaron Rodgers meeting with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we finally have some movement in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. And I think the people that are impatient are, I guess, happy, right? They're probably still upset about something. But we do have some movement. So this came after my show, of course. But Aaron Rodgers did meet with the Steelers and, met with Mike Tomlin and the coaching staff, went to the facility, and he was there for several hours. I believe he was there for like 6 hours. Now, there was no deal. But it does seem like that's probably where he's going to end up if he continues to play. Now, I'm looking at Pro Football Talk, and Mike Florio put out an article, and the headline is "Safe Bet Aaron Rodgers eventually lands with the Steelers." But yeah, he spent more than 6 hours, visited with the Steelers on Friday. But yeah, we still don't have, clarity on, whether he is going to, play or not, because we haven't, he hasn't made a public appearance on, Pat McAfee. So I'm assuming that, it could be one of those things where he appears on the Pat McAfee show and he, lets everybody know what he intends on doing. But, yeah, look, when it comes to the Steelers, there's a lot of Steelers fans that don't want him. There's definitely some that do. Look, Rodgers could still play. He can. Now, the Steelers and the Giants are both in similar spots when it comes to the quarterback position because, and we'll get into the Giants later in the show, but the Steelers have failed to find their next quarterback. They went and drafted Kenny Pickett the year after Big Ben, and that ended up not panning out. So these last couple years now, it's, all right, bring in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and it looked like, hey, it might make a difference. And then they ended up in the same spot that they've been in for years. Now, as an Aaron Rodgers fan, I'm not going to sit here and say that, they're going to bring in Rodgers and they're going to go to the Super Bowl and win it. I'm not going to say that. But I do think Rodgers can come in, the Steelers can win their 10 games, make the playoffs, and it might end up being more of the same. I'm not going to, I will be realistic here and say that. And for a lot of Steelers fans, they don't want that. They want significant change. They want a quarterback that's going to come in. Well, first of all, outside of Aaron Rodgers and what he brings, a lot of people don't want him. A lot of fans don't want him because it's, again, more of the same of what they've done, carrying on from last year, where you're bringing in an aging quarterback. Now you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers, who's older than Russell Wilson. Aaron Rodgers is in his 40s. And you're just hoping that maybe you can, find lightning in a bottle and, you can go on this deep playoff run and get to a Super Bowl. But Steeler fans want their quarterback of the future. Now, that's not to say you bring in Aaron Rodgers and then maybe you go and you draft Jackson Dart in the late first round. Or you take a quarterback at some point in the draft. Maybe it's not with your first pick. Maybe Jackson Dart gets taken. I mean, you're hearing so many different things about the first round. There could be 3 quarterbacks. There could be 4 quarterbacks. There could be 2 quarterbacks being taken in the first round. People I talk to, they think that no quarterback should be taken in the first round in this year's draft. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the Steelers' intentions are doing with their selection. Maybe they trade up and they draft Jackson Dart. Who knows? We'll find out soon enough in about a month here. But the other thing, too, is with Rodgers is how is that relationship going to work with Arthur Smith? And then you look at the supporting cast. Is this supporting cast good enough for Aaron Rodgers? Now, I worry about the offensive line. The offensive line I worried about when he got traded to the Jets, and that ended up being a concern. That ended up not working out the offensive line. Part of the reason he got hurt. With this Steelers offensive line, it's a young offensive line. And, Aaron Rodgers is not going to, extend plays consistently like he used to because he's older now. He's got to throw from the pocket more. And, you saw how he looked when he was playing hurt last year. He was not good. And the reason why he started playing better towards the end of the year is because, he was getting healthier. And you could also say he wasn't playing against very good teams. But he's got to stay healthy. And, you look at the supporting cast, you look at the pass catchers, and you could say, well, George Pickens and DK Metcalf are not great route runners. Okay. But, when Aaron Rodgers could still sling that football, 40, 50 yards, he still has the arm strength. So if he's throwing up a 50-50 ball to George Pickens and DK Metcalf, he's going to fit it in that spot if he has to. Maybe not on a consistent basis, but he can do it. And I think the other thing, too, is with him going to the Steelers, potentially, I think Pat Freiermuth is going to be a security blanket for him. Just like, Tyler Conklin was to an extent. I think, you're going to see that, and, also the running backs. Now, right now, actually, I shouldn't say that because they signed Kenneth Gainwell, but they got Gainwell now, and, Jaylen Warren's going to be back too. So, but Steeler fans don't want to see him dinking and dunking. You want to see big plays. And I think you will see that in this offense. But Arthur Smith has his way of running the offense, so, it's going to be interesting how that relationship goes. But, you see the clips of, Rodgers talking highly about Mike Tomlin. And, Tomlin and him both have great respect for each other. So I think that also plays a role into this as well. But I don't know. I know some people are going to say he's going to be a distraction. Look, I think he's going to be a distraction when he goes on the McAfee show. But I don't think he's going to go into that locker room and he's just going to disrupt everything. I really think the McAfee show is the biggest thing because that just gets so many that gets so much attention. But I think he's going to go in there and he's going to play ball. And if it doesn't pan out, so be it. It's a tough division that he's going to be playing in. You're going to be playing with Lamar Jackson. You're going to be playing Joe Burrow. I don't know what the Browns are doing, but we'll talk about them later in the show. But that's a very tough division. And can he be a difference maker? Can he do that? We'll see. We'll see. But I think that's where we're headed. He's going to be a Steeler. We'll talk about it when it happens. I mean, it might not happen now. It might happen after the draft. So, nothing yet, but at least we got some movement that he did visit with the Steelers. And again, I'm going to repeat this because you have people saying he's holding teams hostage. He's not holding anybody hostage. Since when does a hostage say they're willing to wait? for him to make a decision. When do we hear that? They're okay. And you know what? They could easily pull themselves out of the sweepstakes and say, you know what? We're going to go in a different direction. They could easily do that. Now, you might not bring in a marquee name. Like the Steelers already brought in Mason Rudolph. But it's not like Aaron Rodgers is the end-all, be-all. And Russell Wilson is still out there. So you can still patch things up with him if you want. But I don't think that's happening at this point. But it'll be interesting. I think if Rodgers goes to the Steelers, I think he'll have a good year. But I don't think, and it's sad to say for me as a Rodgers fan, once again, it's not going to lead to a Super Bowl. It's not. Make the playoffs? Yes. Maybe win one playoff game? Maybe. But that's it. That's my ceiling for Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers is 10 wins, playoff win in the first round, and then that's it. That's it. Because, are you going to Steelers go on the road against Kansas City? They go on the road against Buffalo. You're going to take the Steelers? Probably not. But this is all just hypotheticals, as I like to say. Now, listen, I would love for Aaron Rodgers to go to the Steelers and you knock off Lamar Jackson in the first round, you knock off Josh Allen in the second round, you knock off Patrick Mahomes, and then you play the Eagles in the Super Bowl as they go for a repeat and he knocks them off. But it's not happening. It's not happening. So we'll have to wait and see. We will have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys think about Rodgers visiting with the Steelers. Do you think we will see a potential deal in the near future? And how do you think Rodgers fits on the Steelers? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. So, and also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about LeBron James and him making his return to the court for the Lakers. We'll talk about how the Lakers have done recently and where they are currently in the Western Conference standings and if they can improve their positioning. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about LeBron James returning to the court after missing a couple of weeks with a strained left groin. And we'll talk about the Lakers and where they currently are in the Western Conference. So, LeBron made his return yesterday, or over the weekend. I think Saturday is when they played. Yeah, Saturday's when they played. They went up against the Chicago Bulls and they ended up losing 146 to 115. And the Bulls were 10.5-point underdogs going into this game. So, looking at the Bulls, so Kobe White had 36 points in the game. And it was close in the first half. But then in the second half, Bulls outscored the Lakers 39 to 27 in the third quarter, and then 42 to 26 in the fourth quarter. For LeBron, he had 17 points, went 7 of 16, 1 for 2 from three-point range, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Luka Doncic, he had 34, 8 and 6, went 10 of 18, 8 of 13 from 3. So he had a very efficient night. And then Austin Reeves, 25 points, 2 rebounds, 5 assists. He also was efficient, 9 of 13 from the field. I want to look at Reeves' stats. So this is what Reeves has done in his last. Now he didn't play against the Bucks on the 20th, but you go back to the 13th, which actually was against the Bucks. So his last 6 games that he's played in, 28 points, 37, 28, 30, 22, and then 25 against the Bulls. And on the season, he's averaging 19 points, 6 assists, and 4.5 rebounds. I mean, he's been playing really well. The Lakers have their own big three. And some people might not be familiar with Austin Reeves. Because when you think big three, you're thinking, oh man, that's like LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. Well, you look at the Lakers, a lot of people say, well, it's a big two. You got LeBron and Luka. But no, it's a big three. Austin Reeves, give him respect. He's scoring a ton of points. So, Lakers, wasn't great on Saturday against the Bulls. But in the grand scheme of things, look, this doesn't jeopardize a playoff spot or anything. They're okay. This kind of stuff happens in the NBA. And the other thing, too, is LeBron is just coming back. So, he'll get into his groove, and they'll be ready to rock and roll when we get around to the playoffs. But where do the Lakers currently stand at the moment? So, they're 2 games back of the Rockets for the 2 seed. They're 1 game back of the Nuggets for the 3 seed. They're a half game up on the Grizzlies for the 5 seed. And then the Warriors, they're 2.5 games back of them for the 4th seed. The Warriors are currently at the 6th seed, but the Timberwolves are right behind them. They're a half game back. So I could see, a lot can change, right? The Lakers, it wasn't like before LeBron's injury. If LeBron doesn't get hurt, I think, the Lakers probably still have, the 2 seed or the 3 seed. But it's because LeBron ended up getting hurt that kind of set them back a little bit. But it's not like they've been playing terrible without LeBron. But obviously that you don't want to see him going down for those couple of weeks, after in that game against the Celtics. So, it's pretty jam-packed in the Western Conference. But looking at the Lakers' remaining schedule, you have the Magic tonight. Then you have the Pacers. Actually, they're on the road for 4 straight games. You got the Magic, Pacers, Bulls again, Grizzlies, then home against the Rockets, home against the Warriors, home against the Pelicans. You got the Thunder on a back-to-back in OKC. Then you got the Mavericks, Rockets, and then Trailblazers. So, it's kind of tough coming up. But, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens down the stretch here. But that's going to be one of those teams that I want to watch closely during the playoffs and see, who they're going to match up against. Because right now they'd be matching up against the Grizzlies, which I think, the Grizzlies have had a nice bounce-back season. They have. With John Morant being healthy this year. But in a 7-game series, I'd probably take the Lakers. And then they'd probably play OKC in the next round, depending on how everything else shapes out. Because right now, So the Phoenix Suns actually are in a playoff spot or a play-in spot. You got the Kings at the 9, Clippers at the 8, Timberwolves at the 7. So let's just focus on the top 8 teams. So you'd have the Thunder and the Clippers in the first round. Thunder win. Rockets and the Timberwolves. That's an interesting 2-7 matchup because I could definitely see the Timberwolves winning in 7 games. So, yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting because then, if you had like the Timberwolves knock off the Rockets, the Thunder would play them, I think, in the second round. So then the Lakers, they would match up against, either, if the Nuggets win, or if they match up against the Warriors. If the Warriors knocked off the Nuggets, the way things are right now, I don't know. We got to see where everybody finishes. But yeah, things can change. Things can definitely change. There's ebbs and flows to the season here. But they got LeBron back. They've lost their last 2 games, but look, they're going to make the playoffs. It would be crazy if they knocked down to the play-in, but I don't see that happening. But I could definitely see them staying right where they are. But looking at the NBA action for tonight, so we did, touch upon the Lakers. They'll be taking on the Magic. You got the Timberwolves against the Pacers. That's a good game. The Bucks and the Suns, that's on late. The Suns trying to hold on to that final spot. And I did say that I think the Suns are going to make it because, simply just because Dallas is just not healthy. You also have the Celtics and the Kings tonight. That's on late. The Bulls and the Nuggets, 76ers and the Pelicans, Raptors and the Wizards. The Mavericks actually are on the East Coast tonight. They're taking on the Brooklyn Nets. That's on at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So, yeah. And the Lakers, for them, they're in Orlando. That's going to be a road game for them against the Magic. But, yeah, so LeBron is back. Obviously, when we go back to, the Celtics game when he got hurt, he talked about how it wasn't much of a concern. So, yeah, he did miss 2 weeks. But, he's ready for this stretch run. And let's see where the Lakers end up finishing in the conference. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch them just because, you're going to have LeBron and Luka in the playoffs together. And we'll see if... LeBron can get back to the finals for the first time in a while, and, if Luka can make it back to the finals for the second year in a row. But it's going to be very tough. It's going to be very tough because, you got a lot of good teams in the Western Conference, and, obviously the Thunder, they got something to prove. Young team. Last year they got knocked out early. Now they're back at it, 1 seed. Obviously Denver, they've won a championship in recent years. You got the Warriors lurking, although they suffered a bad loss over the weekend as well. Who did they play? Because I was focusing on college basketball, so I really wasn't paying attention to the NBA. But and take a look at the Warriors. So the Warriors, they lost 124-115. To the Hawks. They also lost 114-105, but that was last Monday. But, Trae Young had 25 against them. Actually had 4 out of the 5 starters for the Hawks scoring double digits. You also had, off the bench, Hawks got good production. So, actually, there was no Curry. Well, actually, because Curry got hurt. He ended up landing on his backside, but I don't think that's significant. I don't think we heard any. He suffered a pelvic contusion a couple days ago. Actually, let's take a. It doesn't seem like it's a major thing, but yeah, it's a scary situation there. But so he's been out, but I don't think it's anything major that we have to worry about. But definitely a scary situation there when that happened. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think though. Hopefully, Curry comes back and they'll be good to go. The Warriors, because maybe we'll see more playoff Jimmy with Steph Curry. So I hope we do get a Curry LeBron matchup in these playoffs. And obviously, you throw Luka in there as well, and with Jimmy Butler. I mean, I would love to see a 7-game series between those two, because that could be, you don't know if that could be the last time. They meet up in the playoffs, if that potentially happens. But yeah, let me know what you guys think though. Any NBA stuff that you want to comment about, let me know in the comments. And when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the topic that I am most excited to cover today, and that is Jameis Winston joining the Giants. And you could say, well, that's because you're a Giant fan. No, it's just, well, kind of, I guess. But I do want to talk about it, because, hey, it's quarterback news. The Giants are a team that's looking for a quarterback, and they got one. And we'll talk about all the implications with that, and what that means for the Giants as we approach the draft, and if they can maybe add another quarterback, because that is going to happen. So we will get into all that when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Giants, the New York Football Giants, signing Jameis Winston. And I am very happy about this move. Now, it's funny because on Friday, I was working, and my friend's also a Giant fan. We were kind of going back and forth, talking about the Giants, what they're going to do. And, I did bring up Jameis Winston and said, hey, look, I would love for them to sign him just to get him. And, for a while, you never heard that Jameis Winston was connected to the Giants. It was Rodgers, it was Russell Wilson. Well, before that, it was Matthew Stafford. The Giants were in on Matthew Stafford trying to acquire him. But then, you heard Rodgers, you heard Russell Wilson, and then you even heard Joe Flacco. And you even heard, I think, even Carson Wentz, too. Which, yeah, no. But, well, you could even say the same thing about Jameis. But anyways, yeah, so we heard nothing about Jameis Winston. I said, why don't we get Jameis Winston? Why don't they sign Jameis Winston? And then all of a sudden, the Giants bring him in for a visit. And I was like, okay. And then, while I'm working, my friend texts me Jameis in all caps. And I said, no way, did they sign him? And I go to my phone, and sure enough, the Giants ended up signing Jameis Winston. And the only quarterback that they have on the roster, other than Jameis Winston, is Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets. So they bring in Jameis, and the specifics of the contract. So he signs, it's an interesting contract, because I didn't think about this initially, and then, of course, I started watching, the Giants YouTubers that I do watch, the Giant content creators. They signed him to a 2-year, $8 million contract that could be upwards to $16 million because of incentives. So when you look at that contract, you say to yourself, that's backup quarterback money. And because if you remember last year, I mean, they signed Drew Lock to I don't even remember. It was not that much either. It was $4 or $5 million. So yeah, this does not mean that we're going to go into the season and Jameis Winston is going to be the starting quarterback for the Giants. This could mean that Jameis Winston, he's brought in to be a backup, which I'd be okay with. So when I was watching, the content creators that I watch for the Giants, there's several different things that could happen. And it all depends on what the Browns could do, essentially. Because you look at the draft, it seems like the Titans, they could be set on taking Cam Ward. All right, so he's out. He's out of the equation. But now you got the Cleveland Browns. What are the Browns going to do? Now, we're going to talk about them in the next segment. But the Browns, they could draft a quarterback with the second pick. Now, if that's the case, the Giants, they could say to themselves, all right, well, if nobody signs Russell Wilson, and let's just say maybe Aaron Rodgers doesn't go to the Steelers, then maybe they get one of those guys. And then you have a platoon, I guess. I mean, you probably have more platoon with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, but you could have a quarterback room of Aaron Rodgers, Jameis Winston, Tommy Cutlets, or you could have Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Tommy Cutlets. So there's that scenario. But you could also have, now that I think about it, even if the Browns don't take a quarterback, now, or they don't sign, maybe they don't sign Russell Wilson. Maybe they sign Carson Wentz because there was some, I think there's mutual interest between Carson Wentz and the Browns. I don't know. I definitely saw something like that. But again, you don't know how true all that is. So let's say they bring in Carson Wentz and Russ is still out there. Then all of a sudden, maybe the Giants could say, all right, we're going to sign Russ. We got Jameis. Now we're going to even take a quarterback. We're going to take a quarterback with our third pick. So then you're going to have Russell Wilson, Jameis, and Shedeur Sanders. And then I don't know. I guess Tommy Cutlets goes to the practice squad. I don't know. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's either going to be you sign Russ, you have Russ and Jameis, don't take a quarterback, and maybe you hope that next year, you somehow could work something out where, you could win games and then you could take a young quarterback in next year's draft. Or Russ gets signed by the Browns, and the Browns take Abdul Carter, let's say, and then the Giants take Shedeur Sanders, and then you have Jameis start the year, and then Shedeur Sanders comes in later in the year. The problem is, though, so first of all, the Giants could do really whatever right now, because now you have a legit backup quarterback on your roster. I mean, Drew Lock, obviously they won the game against the Colts, but Jameis could start for you, for several games, but not over the course of, I agree with what, people are saying. He's not a guy that's going to start 17 games for your team. He's not. So you could bring him in. He's going to start several games for you, and then you could switch over to the rookie. So the Giants could do a lot of different things with the quarterback situation. But the good thing is they have a legit quarterback on the roster. Now, you could say Tommy Cutlets is a legit quarterback. I would disagree with you. Tommy Cutlets is also a backup, but that magic, kind of faded last year. He was not good when he played. Now, you could also say because the Giants also were horrendous. But Giants also weren't good in 2023, and he was okay. He was able to win games. So, but the thing is, though, with that being said, the Giants, they're not going to win a lot of games next year. So even if they, do everything right, they get the young quarterback right. If they don't win a lot of games, Brian Dable and Joe Shane are gone. And then it's well, what happens now? You bring in a new coaching staff with this quarterback that they've inherited. So it's a lot. There's a lot of pressure on Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, and I think Joe Schoen has done well in the offseason with the moves that the Giants have made. He's signed a lot of depth guys. On the offensive line, on the defensive line, on with the receivers. They signed a couple of receivers. They signed Zach Pascal and Lil Jordan Humphrey, and that could mean that Jalen Hyatt is not going to be on the Giants next year. But, and then they signed, Adenabo and Javon Holland for the secondary. So, the defense on paper, I think, is going to be good. It looks like it's going to be good, but we said the same thing last year. But, if the secondary's good, and, they give these pass rushers time to get after the quarterback, and you got other young players in the secondary that you pair up Holland and Adenabo with. So, Giants on paper have a good defense. And they showed you at times last year that they could be a solid unit. It's just the offense for years has just been so putrid. And hopefully with Jameis and, whatever else they decide to do, the offense is competent. They can win some games. And I'm hoping that they do well enough where Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen keep their jobs and they really can continue to build this team. Now, some people will disagree with that. I get it. But you don't want to keep going through this, lather, rinse, and repeat, where you're bringing in a new regime and then they're out in a couple of years. The Giants need stability. And maybe with their backs against the wall, these two guys are really going to bring it next year. It's going to be hard to because the schedule is nearly impossible. Because you play 6 games against your own division. Every team is better than you in the division. You play against I think they play against the NFC West next year. It's either the NFC West or the NFC North. Then you play the AFC West. So you're playing against Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh. So have fun with that. It's not an easy schedule. There's not a lot of wins on the schedule. But maybe they surprise Giant fans. Maybe Russ comes in, throws some moon balls to Malik Neighbors. Jameis comes in, he throws for 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. Giants win in the shootout against Dallas. Maybe Jameis comes in, plays against the Eagles, and the Giants win their first game in Philly since I was in middle school. It's not happening. It's not happening. Actually, you know what's interesting? I kind of foreshadowed Jameis going to the Giants because he was my quarterback for a little bit in Ultimate Team. I had a 90 overall Jameis in Ultimate Team, and the uniform I use for my Ultimate Team is the Giants. So, yeah, and maybe I'm foreshadowing Josh Allen because, now Josh Allen's my starting quarterback. But, yeah, no, when it comes to Jameis, though, you know what you're getting out of him. We really haven't talked about Jameis, honestly. But we know what we're getting out of Jameis. All right? He's going to throw for a ton of yards in certain games, but he's also the turnovers. But you know what? Giant fans, for them, it gives them excitement. Like, we could see Jameis and Malik Neighbors having this strong connection. Malik Neighbors could put up big numbers. I mean, look at the game that we'll talk about in the next segment. I mean, Jameis to Jerry Jeudy. I mean, I know Jameis threw a couple of pick sixes. He almost threw 3. But Jameis threw for almost 500 yards. Jerry Jeudy, I think, had over 200 yards receiving in the game. I'll have to go back and look. But he had a huge game against his former team. You could get that in some games with Jameis. But, yeah, it does come with the bad. He could throw a lot of interceptions. He could fumble the football. But you know what? He's a motivator. He's going to be great for the locker room. And it's also funny because you go back to, media day with the Super Bowl, and Jameis was there, and he was interviewing players, and he was saying to Saquon, I'm a free agent. Do you have a place in mind that I could sign with? And Saquon said, I heard New York needs a quarterback. And he clarified because Jameis was like, which team? And he said the Giants. And he was like, thank you. And now here we are, a month later, and Jameis is a quarterback on the Giants. How about that? So I'm happy about it. I like this move. I think the deal is very team friendly. And again, Giants have another quarterback that they're trying to add, whether it's through the draft or free agency. But we got to see. Russell Wilson's waiting on Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Russ, I think, is going to end up either in Cleveland or with the Giants. Rodgers, I think, is going to the Steelers. That's the way it looks right now. And then, we'll see what happens in the draft. Titans are probably taking a quarterback, and, what are the Browns going to do? Maybe the Browns sign a quarterback that we don't see coming, Carson Wentz, Maybe they bring back Flacco. Who knows? Because they have Kenny Pickett on the roster. So, and Deshaun Watson. So, we'll get into all that in the next segment. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the Giants signing Jameis. You like the move, let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we will talk about the Browns' 2024 season, how that went, and what they've done in the offseason so far. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to get into talking about the Cleveland Browns season overview on their 2024 campaign, how it went. And yeah, it did not go very well for the Browns. You go back to last year, and I've brought it up a ton of times, this team with the quarterback position. Now, I know, again, I'll say it, Jeff Driscoll they had on their team. He started the final game of the season, but you got to include him in that. But you had Deshaun Watson and DTR and P.J. Walker and Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco came in and basically saved the Browns season. They won 11 games. They made the playoffs. They did end up losing to the Texans, but they made the playoffs. And they dealt with a ton of injuries with the offensive line, and Nick Chubb tore up his knee. They were ravaged by injuries, and despite all that, they made the playoffs. And Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year. So this year, Browns kind of same thing. Quarterback position, Deshaun Watson tears his Achilles, then tears his Achilles again, and now might not even play at all in 2025, and the Browns might be parting ways with him at the end of the 2025 season. And the Browns ended up winning 3 games. So, yeah, I was talking about how excited it is that Jameis is now on the Giants, but Jameis did start a decent amount of games for the Browns. And the Browns only won 3 games. They ended up winning. So they won against Jacksonville. Now, their best win of the season came against the Ravens. Upset win in Cleveland. I had the pleasure of being at that game in person. And then they also beat the Steelers in the snow. So 2 divisional wins, and they beat Jacksonville, who was just as bad. Actually, no, they were a little bit better. They had 4 wins. Browns had 3. So those are the 3 wins for the Browns this season, or last year. They started off the year, played against the Cowboys. Cowboys ended up winning 33-17. And that week, everyone's like, wow, the Cowboys, that was an impressive win by them. And then we saw what happened with the Cowboys after that. But yeah, they ended up losing. But then they ended up winning against the Jaguars, but that was an ugly game. Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence both did not play well in the game. And then the Browns proceeded to lose their next 5 games. And other than the Commanders game, which the Commanders won 34-13, the losses were all one-score games. They lost to the Giants. Giants actually, were shut out in the second half. Giants were up 21-7 going into the half. But the Browns just could not get anything going. I think, how many sacks did the Giants have in the game? They had they had 8 sacks in the game. I remember they had a lot of sacks. They got after Deshaun Watson. They really did. And did they have a couple of turnovers in the game? A couple of fumble recoveries. Deshaun Watson, under 200 yards passing. He did not have one game in the games that he started. He did not have one game where he threw for over 200 yards. So, and actually, this game started off rough for the Giants because I think the Giants, they fumbled on the kickoff. Right? They fumbled on the kickoff. And then on the first play, Deshaun Watson throws a touchdown to Amari Cooper. And you thought, oh, man, the Giants are going to get destroyed in this game. But that didn't happen. So, yeah, then you had the game against the Raiders. They took the lead at one point. Amari Cooper scored that touchdown, and then that ended up getting called back. So, yeah, that was not good. So, yeah, they ended up losing, fell to 1-3. Commanders, we went over that game. Jane Daniels and that offense had their way against the Browns. Lost a close game with the Eagles. And, that after that game, I was like, man, the Eagles just don't look that good. But, yeah, that was, we were wrong on that. As I said they were going to be good, but it's just, I was like, they just don't look good so far this year. But they turned it up after that game. And then we get to Week 7, and Deshaun Watson tears his Achilles. Jameis comes in. They end up losing 21-14. Yeah, 1-6. And then Jameis' first game starting against the Ravens. He goes 27-41, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Nick Chubb making his return. Well, he returned the previous week against the Bengals. And then, yeah, Deshaun Watson goes down. But, yeah, that was an unbelievable game. A lot of fun to be at that game, to witness it. And, yeah, that was also, they honored their play-by-play broadcaster, Jim Donovan. I forgot about that because he unfortunately passed away, from cancer. And they honored him before the game. So, yeah, I had no idea, going in that, that happened because Siciliani was doing play-by-play for them. So, yeah, that game meant a lot for the Browns, and they were able to come away with the win. I mean, Jameis had a couple of picks. If the Ravens held on to the ball, Jameis would have turned the ball over, but did not throw an interception. Well, he did turn the ball over. He lost a fumble, but Cedric Tillman had a big game. 2 touchdowns in that game. He caught the go-ahead touchdown late. And the Ravens, they were driving. It's just they fell short there. But, yeah, very good game. But then the following week, they went up against the Chargers. Jameis threw 3 picks. So, Chargers ended up winning 27-10. Then they went into their bye. They ended up losing to the Saints 35-14. Jameis, 2 touchdowns. He had almost 400 yards passing. Jerry Jeudy had a big game. 6 receptions for 142 yards and a touchdown. But, yeah, they ended up losing. Taysom Hill had 3 touchdowns in the game, right? Yeah. He had 7 carries for 138 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Valdez-Scantling, 2 receptions for 87 yards and a touchdown. So, yeah, they lost that game. They defeated the Steelers in the snow. That was an ugly game for a while. It was 10-3 at the half. A lot of scoring in the fourth quarter, though. But, yeah, the Browns got the win there. But, yeah, then they lose that high-scoring game against the Broncos. If Jameis just didn't throw pick sixes, I mean, you never know. But, yeah, he had 3 interceptions in the game. He threw for 497 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then Jerry Jeudy, 9 receptions for 235 yards and a touchdown. And Njoku had 2 touchdowns. Chubb had a receiving touchdown. But actually, there were a lot of turnovers in the game. Bo Nix had 2 interceptions. But, yeah, they lost that. Then they lost to the Steelers, 27-14. They lose to the Chiefs. And then Jameis ended up getting benched basically for the rest of the year. DTR started against the Bengals. He started against the Dolphins. And actually, well, he played a little bit in the Ravens game, but they actually had Bailey Zappi start against the Ravens last game of the season. So yeah, they ended up losing that. And the Browns went 3-14, and they will be picking second in the NFL draft. And you look at the stats. So Deshaun Watson, he finished with 1,148 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. Jameis Winston, 2,121 passing yards, 13 touchdowns to 12 picks. That's what you get out of Jameis. And then DTR, no touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Bailey Zappi, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Their leading rusher was Jerome Ford, 565 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Nick Chubb had around the same amount of carries as Jerome Ford, but he had 332 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he averaged only 3.22 yards per carry. And Chubb is currently a free agent. I don't know where he's going to end up, but he's probably not going back to Cleveland. Jerry Jeudy, very good in his first season with the Browns. They signed him to a 3-year extension, and so far so good. 90 receptions, 1,229 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. Njoku, he had 505 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. Elijah Moore, 538 and 1 touchdown. They traded Amari Cooper at the deadline. He ended up going to the Bills. And then we look at the defensive side of the ball. Myles Garrett led the team in sacks. No surprise there. It looked like he was going to be on his way out, but then the Browns gave him a boatload of money. He's staying. But, yeah, the Browns have some work to be done in the draft. They're picking number 2. They could go with best player available. They could go with a quarterback. They did bring in Kenny Pickett. Deshaun Watson is really going to be a non-factor on the team next year. I would be surprised if we saw him at all. But, yeah, I don't really know what to expect from the Browns next season. I mean, on paper, they still have a good team. Actually, they did sign Tavon Jenkins, a guard from the Bears. They signed Cornelius Lewis, a tackle. So they signed some depth for the offensive line. They brought in Devin Bush, Malik Collins are from the Niners. They recently signed DeAndre Carter. They added him to the receiving corps. But, yeah, they did trade for Kenny Pickett. They did a DTR Kenny Pickett swap. So, yeah, looking at the depth chart for the Browns. So I think who do they have? They got Pickett. They got, well, yeah, I mean, they still have Deshaun Watson. But, yeah, like I said, I'd be surprised if we see Deshaun Watson. I mean, the Browns, they could still bring another quarterback. I mean, again, it could be Russell Wilson because he met with the Browns. It could be Carson Wentz, maybe, Flacco, who knows. Or they draft a young quarterback. We'll have to wait and see. But, I had the Browns. I think I had them winning 10 games. I think won 3. Yeah, just season went in a complete opposite direction. And it's just funny how they beat the 2 teams in their division that made the playoffs. Both were home games. So we'll see what this brings for the Browns, but they definitely could use a running back. I mean, offensive line, of course, with the injuries that they've had to deal with over the years. Quarterback, I mean, maybe they had a receiver late, but defensively, if they want to add Abdul Carter, you add another pass rusher to go along with Myles Garrett, you could do that. But there's definitely several different positions they could address. I mean, quarterback is probably the main one because Deshaun Watson is not playing again for them. He's just not, in my opinion. But we'll see. I was dead wrong on how the Browns were going to shape out. I thought, if Deshaun Watson stayed healthy, they could at least, but even when he was still playing, he just, was not good. They couldn't overcome it this year. And that happens. I thought they could do it again when Deshaun got hurt, but it just didn't happen. So, but let me know what you guys think, though, about the Browns. What do you think they could address? What do you think they're going to take with their first pick? And do you think they'll sign Russ? Let me know some predictions you have maybe for the Browns. So that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows on the network. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our videos. And, until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that